I'm here with David Daleiden, founder of the Center for Medical Progress. David, welcome to NTD.
Great to be here.
So, David, you made yourself famous by going undercover and getting a lot of very damning footage, actually, from Planned Parenthood. And there's currently lawsuits against you, more than one. Could you give us an update, briefly describe what you did and give us an update on those lawsuits?
Definitely, sure. So after CMP went undercover for 2.5 years, and we recorded Planned Parenthood's top senior level leadership callously negotiating the harvesting and sale of aborted baby body parts from late-term abortions, which Planned Parenthood would typically sell to middleman companies, sometimes supplied directly to major publicly funded research universities, and then the biotech companies would in turn sell them on to the experimenters.
How late term? Can I just interrupt you?
As late as 6 months on healthy, viable infants. It's typically the later second trimester body parts that are the most in demand for experimental purposes. And so when we documented all of this and started releasing the videos, Planned Parenthood and their allies in the abortion industry were not happy about it, as you can imagine. They did not want this to be a big focus of public discussion. And so they've pushed back as hard as they can with all the firepower that they can muster with their political allies like Kamala Harris and others from the California Attorney General's office. They've pushed back with really everything they have to try to suppress my First Amendment rights and to try to basically shut me up and bury the videos and try and pretend like all of this has never happened. So Planned Parenthood brought a multi-million-dollar federal lawsuit in San Francisco federal court. There was a twin lawsuit to that brought by their allies at the National Abortion Federation, also in San Francisco federal court. Both of those are in front of Judge William Orrick, who's an Obama appointee who actually helped found and fund and operate a Planned Parenthood clinic in San Francisco before he was appointed to the bench.
Calls to recuse himself?
Many calls to recuse himself, motions to disqualify him from sitting on the case. He has refused time and again to step aside and let an unbiased judge take care of the case.
So what are the actual charges?
Yeah, so all of the lawsuits the two lawsuits are basically focused around two different theories. One is under the video recording laws. Planned Parenthood is trying to claim that all of these conversations were private conversations and it was an invasion of privacy to record them, which is completely insane because they took place in crowded places of public accommodation, restaurants, hotel lobbies, places like that. And some judges have even ruled now that these are public places and Planned Parenthood has no claim that they were private areas.
And you planned it that way on purpose, or you
Yes, exactly, yes. That was not just an accident. We were very intentional. We had opportunities to film inside private clinic spaces in California, and I chose not to do that because with the California law, you are allowed to record public conversations in public areas. You can't record in private spaces. So we were very careful to look at that, but Planned Parenthood has tried to basically twist the reality and the history of what happened in order to serve this narrative with these lawsuits. And then they were even able to convince their ally Kamala Harris, who is now a U.S. Senator, but at the time was the Attorney General of the state of California. They convinced Kamala Harris to bring criminal charges against me and one of my undercover investigators under the California video recording law, the case solely based on the California video recording law. This is the first and only time in the history of that law that it has ever been used to criminally prosecute news gathering. Local news journalists in California on a weekly and daily basis are regularly still doing undercover video. Sometimes the news journalists are actually recording in truly private places that they really shouldn't be under the California law, and not a single one of them has been prosecuted, had their stuff raided, or anything like that from the California Attorney General's office. I am the first and only case.
So are they concerned that this could set a dangerous precedent, or are they like, we know why they're going after him and there's
They should be. I think that anyone who cares about free discussion in our country, who cares about the First Amendment, who cares about freedom of speech, and who frankly cares about not having viewpoint-based discrimination against speakers and against citizens should be really concerned about what the California Attorney General has been doing in this case at the behest of their political backers at Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood doesn't care about that. The AG's office doesn't care about that. And so they're willing to run roughshod over the civil liberties of regular American and California citizens, all in the service of their pro-abortion ideology and to protect their sacred cow, which is Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry.
Are there other charges against you, other types of charges?
The only charges are they are all based on the California video recording law. Either it started with 15. We've been able to drop several of them, so the case is starting to fall apart, thankfully, because it's a bogus political case. But there are now 8 charges under the video recording law itself, and then a conspiracy charge as if we're conspiring to break the California law. Although as I told you, we specifically were very careful to only record in public places, public conversations that could be overheard by third parties.
So when you went into this, did you know what you were going to find?
So there had been an early expose, some early work done on the subject of fetal experimentation and trafficking in baby body parts from abortions back in 1999 and 2000. Although that early expose from the organization Life Dynamics did not include any audio or video recordings. They really only had documents, and it wasn't primarily focused necessarily on Planned Parenthood or on the suppliers of the body parts. They were focused on a lot of the different players in the market. So in some ways it was broader, and it didn't go as sort of directly to the point. And then when it first came across my radar in 2010, that was 10 years later, and there had been no follow-up by any major pro-life advocacy organization, by any major citizen journalism organization. No one had followed up on this incredibly disturbing issue of the body parts of aborted children being commodified and really being parted out and being sold off even before the abortions are done. People sometimes say, you know, the babies are going to die anyway, as if that somehow makes it better, but in reality, the demand from the market and the deals are being placed over the different body parts while those children are still alive, before the abortion has even happened. So it creates a lot, it brings in a lot of really inappropriate, disturbing pressures into the clinic that create incentives for certain abortions to happen in certain ways. So we knew that this was definitely a problem that was out there that needed to be covered, which is why I decided to do this project and do this undercover operation. But I don't think that anybody was really prepared for how blatant the violations were going to be, the ethical and regulatory and legal violations that we would find on Planned Parenthood's part. I was shocked by how high up the chain it went. Some of the most famous undercover footage that we've released is of Planned Parenthood's then Senior Director of Medical Services, so the top abortion doctor in their entire organization, who's responsible for training all the other doctors, for writing the how-to manual of how to run your Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, basically, in charge of oversight for the entire clinical operations of the national organization. And she was one of the people who was the most excited to network with us and help us connect with other abortion doctors to trade body parts within Planned Parenthood. She herself admitted on the undercover camera to using basically a partial birth abortion method to harvest more valuable body parts for the company that they were working with in Los Angeles. So that was the top doctor at Planned Parenthood who knew about this, who was a big supporter and was trying to make it grow within their organization. So I was surprised by the heights to which it went.
How big is the demand?
The demand for fetal body parts for experimentation is certainly bigger than most people would expect. Just the NIH alone, the National Institutes of Health, is a federally funded major research entity. They are now spending about $120 million a year on research projects that use aborted human fetal tissue for their experimentation. That may only be the threshold level of how much money is involved in this market. There are major pharmaceutical companies that have a big demand for aborted fetal tissue just as sort of a cheap, easy, raw supply of a lot of just raw human biological material to do pharmaceutical testing on. Some of the abortion clinics that we networked with when we were undercover projected that they would be making revenues as a clinic of up to $250,000 a year just off of the sale of body parts alone for one clinic. So, as you can imagine, the exact financial documents and the precise accounting records and bank records have been some of the most closely guarded secrets. Even over the past 5 years, a lot of that information hasn't really come out publicly yet. Planned Parenthood, their lawyers, their allies have worked very, very hard to bury that specific data. But the little that we are aware of through public records requests and others is very significant and very disturbing.
So you mentioned the NIH, and Judicial Watch just released some documents that they got from a FOIA request that is showing the NIH paid between over $18,000 between December 2016, August 2018 to Advanced Bioscience Resources for fetal body parts, basically. So that's all connected, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes. So Advanced Bioscience Resources, or ABR, is one of the oldest companies that is involved in this kind of middleman wholesaler space for baby body parts, where they embed their own technicians inside of the abortion clinics, typically a large Planned Parenthood surgical center. And that technician from ABR gets an order list from the researcher clients that ABR has, which include NIH researchers, which includes major university researchers like UCLA or University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It includes pharmaceutical companies, it includes private startup biotech companies. So the ABR technician gets a fax or an email in the abortion clinic in the morning with a list of body parts that their customers are ordering that day. And then the ABR technician can match that up and target the pregnant women who are coming into the abortion clinic that morning to identify the ones who are gestated enough to meet the customer demand that ABR has that day. So if ABR needs to harvest, 6 5-month-old fetal brains that day for their customers, you can imagine the pressure that is going to be on every single woman who's coming in anywhere from 19 to 21 weeks pregnant that morning in that clinic to be targeted by the ABR technician, and they want to make sure that those abortions happen so that they can get the body parts and sell them, and then they can in turn pay Planned Parenthood for providing the patients to them. Basically treating the patients like harvesting pods for this marketplace in baby body parts. And so Advanced Bioscience Resources, they've been around since 1989, which is the same year that I was born. So the very first babies that ABR parted out after they were killed would be my age today if they hadn't been killed by abortion. And ABR has been partnered for about 20 years now with some of the biggest Planned Parenthood affiliates in the country. They've been working for about 20 years with Planned Parenthood in San Diego and Planned Parenthood in Riverside, and they actually were the subject of criminal referrals from the congressional investigations as a result of the relationship between Planned Parenthood and ABR. So ABR is definitely one of the more disturbing companies out there.
They're still operating?
They're still operating. They're still operating in Planned Parenthood in San Diego and Riverside. They basically pioneered this kind of marketplace, and they've been trying to make it go viral for about 30 years now.
Wow.
So
I understand you still have some footage that hasn't been released that's under a gag order, or at least under criminal investigation. How much footage do you have, and what does it have on it?
Sure. So about half of the undercover footage that we ever recorded was recorded at the trade shows of the National Abortion Federation. So there are actual abortion trade shows in our country. Planned Parenthood makes up about 50% of NAF as an organization, both on their board leadership and also in the membership of the organization. NAF hosts this big annual trade show every year for abortion providers. So, it's a trade show like we're here at CPAC, there's an exhibit hall, there's different exhibitors. There's an exhibit hall at the National Abortion Federation in the middle of beautiful, opulent hotel spaces. And at the exhibit hall at the NAF convention, they have an exhibitor who's selling the forceps that they use to dismember the babies in the late-term abortions. And the forceps are laid up from the smaller forceps all the way to the bigger forceps. You can look at the row of how they get bigger and bigger depending on how big the baby is that you're going to have to be able to dismember with the forceps. You have companies like STEM Express, which is a competitor to ABR, exhibiting, sponsoring NAF meetings because it's financially beneficial to the abortion clinics and to the middleman companies.
As a buyer,
so we were posing as buyers. We were basically pretending to be a company or setting ourselves up like a company like ABR or like STEM Express to enter into these networking spaces and have those same kind of conversations to explore the market and to document it. So that's what we were doing at the National Abortion Federation meetings. We have probably close to 200 hours of footage from those conventions, and it is some of the most damning and incriminating stuff that we ever recorded. It's being held back by a gag order right now from Judge Oreck, the Planned Parenthood founder, in the National Abortion Federation lawsuit. NAF is suing under a breach of contract theory, under the exhibitor agreements when you sign up to be an exhibitor at NAF. So even though in an exhibit hall, you've got competitors, right? You've got market competitors in an exhibit hall, different baby parts companies competing against each other, different abortion clinics competing against each other, different medical supply companies competing against each other. So there's market competition going on in the exhibit hall, and the National Abortion Federation is trying to parlay the exhibitor registrations into like a proprietary confidentiality agreement to say that everything that happened in there is completely proprietary trade secret. That's price fixing, and that's a monopoly. If you have all these market competitors and you're saying it's all private and confidential when they're all talking to each other and they're all trying to one-up each other. So it's a very, crazy, bizarre, dangerous situation for the rule of law that NAF and Planned Parenthood and their allies try to create in order to come after me and try and shut down the video footage. But that's what they're able to get away with in San Francisco so far. We're going to be fighting very, very vigorously over the next year and longer if that's what it takes to release this footage, because the public absolutely has to see what was going on at those trade shows.
So do you have any other projects on the go, or is defending yourself your full-time?
I've joked sometimes that I kind of feel like I've been like a full-time paralegal for the past couple of years here, but fortunately, we just had a big trial in the Planned Parenthood case in San Francisco at the end of last year. So I think a lot of the courtroom drama is over for the time being. A lot of it is going to be briefing, a lot of appeals, a lot of stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to a lot of the creative work, a lot of the citizen journalism reporting work. So stay tuned. We're going to have more content coming out from the Center for Medical Progress later this year.
All right. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.